Welcome, critters. I'm Clara Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, plotlines, characters, and players through the lens of sacred reading practices. This particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode 36, I believe, Part 2. And joining me is Atlas.
Hello.
So the icebreaker that I have today is, what is the strangest gift you've ever received?
Um, Strangest, I think, is a whitewashed rock. That one was, yeah.
Like a rock painted white?
Yeah. It was a graduation gift. It was a tradition at my college that you hiked up the hill with a rock, and then one of the graduation gifts that you could get people associated with my college was a rock from the up the hill that had been painted with whitewash. It
Oh,
was a thing. It is weird. It is impossible to explain, but I still have it. It is my doorstop.
so it's a relatively big rock then.
Yeah, they're supposed to be about 10 pounds. So,
That's a big rock.
yeah, and a long hike.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like the cheese wheeling festival that they have, but opposite with
Kind of, yeah.
cool. The strangest gift I've ever seen, I think I'm going to take it as like the strangest contextually gift
Mm,
that I've
mhm.
ever received. When I was a teenager, so I had a very complicated family growing up, because not only were my parents divorced and remarried, but my stepdad's parents were divorced and remarried. So I had step grandparents. And so I had lots of Christmases. I had about 4 or 5 different Christmases a year because of all the different sets of parents we had to go visit. And this particular gift exchange was happening at my step grandparents' house. And in front of everyone, my mom gifted me, as like I was probably like 15 or 16 at the time, a red lace thong lingerie set.
That's uncomfortable.
And I had to open it in front of everyone. And she asked me to like hold it up after I was done opening it.
I, Yikes.
I was like,
Yeah.
what was the thought process behind this, mother?
I have many questions, none of which I actually want answers to.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. So that was probably the strangest gift I've ever received.
Yeah, I think that counts.
I was like, this is a memory that I would want repressed, honestly, if I could choose.
Hmm.
Well, please join us as we embark on this exciting adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. As always, we love hearing your own insights and stories as well, so please comment, like, subscribe below, and ready? All right, let's dive in. So, as we open this podcast episode, where are we, Atlas? Take it away.
All right. We return to the Winters Crest Festival, where there is a pie eating contest about to begin.
Right.
Vex asks if Trinket can join the contest, but is rebuffed because he's a bear, obviously. Vax suggests that they transfigure Trinket into a human, and Keyleth uses a polymorph spell to make it happen. He can't speak, but the party plays it off as him being very drunk, and they manage to get human Trinket to join the pie eating contest along with the twins. They all make it through the first pie, but the twins both lose out on the second one. Trinket is able to continue. He finishes his third pie, but is looking pretty uncomfortable at this point. And after a fourth pie, the contest is down to a very full Trinket and one other person. Vex has to persuade Trinket to continue, and neither competitor actually makes it through the last pie, so they split the reward money, and Trinket has done all of this for the total of 50 gold. A crowd starts to gather near the Sun Tree in anticipation of a speech by Keeper Yenin, and Yenin has Cassandra and Percy join him on the stage when he begins to speak. He talks about the origins of Winters Crest and reminds people to stand up for their beliefs and to hold on to hope. He introduces Cassandra and Percy as the surviving members of the DeRollo family and praises them and Vox Machina for the roles they played in ridding Whitestone of the Briarwoods. The crowd cheers and begins to disperse as Yenin pulls Vox Machina and the DeRollos into a more private conversation. He acknowledges the magnitude of what they've done for the town and offers some of the treasury funds as compensation pending the approval of the DeRollos in the room. He then transitions to asking what they believe the future of Whitestone should be. He does not intend to take a leadership role himself, but suggests that the people would readily follow either Percy or Cassandra. Percy feels he has too much work to do away from the city with Ripley on the loose, and he believes that Cassandra's upbringing would be better suited to ruling anyway. Cassandra is hesitant to ask the people to trust her after everything she's done over the last several years. Percy then suggests a council instead of choosing a single person, saying there should always be a DeRollo in Whitestone, but perhaps we could share the weight. Cassandra agrees, and Yenin tentatively agrees to join the council, suggesting that there are a number of community leaders who would make good additions as well. The party continues to ask questions, and Percy suggests that the DeRollos continue to live in the castle, but that the castle be open to others as well. He suggests that the council be made up of a religious leader, someone from the farming community, an economic leader, a trade leader, and a community leader, with a DeRollo to serve as oversight or a tiebreaker as needed. Cassandra is asked to step into that role and hesitates, afraid that she cannot be trusted. Percy tells her that she is more trustworthy at this point than he is, and gifts her one of the stones in spite of Vex's objections. He explains that in case of emergency, they will be able to take a one-way trip to each other, and that she will not be alone at this point. Cassandra finally agrees to take on the role if that is what the people want. At this point, they circle back to the topic of coin, and Yenin directs the group to Percy. Vex comments that it feels a little shady, but Percy fondly reminds her that he's given her all his coins since the moment they met, and he doesn't have any hesitations about gifting her part of the treasury. They return to the festival. The twins wander off, and Vex tries to pry into what is going on with Vax, but he brushes her off. In spite of this, she passes him a gift, which turns out to be his belt Simon. Keyleth pulls Percy aside to give him a gift as well. It is the skull of a raven she found while helping the farmers clean up after the Briarwoods. She explains that it's meant to remind Percy of what he could have become and the possibilities he shouldn't forget. Percy confides that he doesn't remember what the revenge felt like anymore, but he does regret how much better he could have been. Keyleth reminds him that they are all a work in progress, and there is a lot to look forward to still. The festival continues into the night, and the episode draws to a close.
So cozy.
So cozy.
Yeah, what do we think of this first half?
It's a nice little reminder of, yeah, we're celebrating, but there's a lot to happen after celebrating. Now you have to actually figure out what to do with your victory.
Yeah.
Without taking away from the cozy vibes of the episode. So it's, makes it feel less like an ending and makes it feel like there's places to go from here, which from a storytelling aspect is probably exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no such thing as happily ever after, right?
No.
And especially in stories that you intend to continue forward, in D&D campaigns that you intend to continue forward, it's a doorstop if you do a happily ever after kind of scenario. And
Yeah.
I think it also shows that the happily ever after scenario is quite unrealistic.
It's way more complicated than you want it to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it because it would have been so easy to just keep going with the cozy episode and leave all of the consequences to the next one. But this is yeah, you can celebrate, but this stuff isn't going to wait for you to, relax and figure life out.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm sure you have thoughts on Cassandra.
I always have thoughts on Cassandra. I also have more thoughts on Percy than I actually remembered. Um, because he's so scared in this episode, which I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
mean, they both are.
difficult because I mean, he was never prepared for this type of role within the family, and he didn't even know that he had a family to go back to until
Yeah.
what, 3 days ago, 4 days
Something like that.
ago,
It's
something
very
like
short. Well, a couple weeks because they did that couple week of everybody figuring out, what to do after the Briarwoods.
that.
So it's been a couple weeks, but it's a very short timeline. But I find it interesting that he's so insistent that Cassandra was better set up than he was,
Mm-hmm.
because honestly, they probably had the same education. Neither of them was first in line, neither of them was intended for this kind of position. He just feels inadequate and sees it, with a little bit more objectivity when it comes to her.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting to me that both of them are like, not me.
Mm-hmm.
But Percy is the one that wins out in saying that he's not gonna take this role.
Yeah, I mean, it's the epitome of reluctant hero, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
think
And
they're all kind of dealing with the reluctant hero aspect at the moment.
I think that's kind of a lot of what Vox Machina is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's they're heroes, but there's always a level of imposter syndrome with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially I think with Percy, because he's so wrapped up in the choices he made in early campaign, like especially this close to the Briarwood arc, I think he's still dwelling very much on the choices he made and not what actually happened. And I think Cassandra a little bit is falling into that trap too. It's a family thing. Um, of focusing so much on her regrets and the choices that she made that a lot of the time doesn't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's wrapped up in it because she knows what happened, but most people don't, and most would, accept that she was under the control of the vampire. They all knew what was happening, they all experienced it to some level, but
Mm-hmm.
she can't forgive herself, and neither can Percy. And it's just this
Yeah.
complex that comes with being a Derolo, apparently.
I was thinking, does Keeper Yenin even know? Or is it only Vox Machina that knows?
I want to say Keeper Yenin knows, but I don't know why I think that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know either. But yeah, you're right. I mean, no one knows what she did beyond that close circle. And they're both thinking they're both inadequate for sure.
Yeah. And like Yenin's whole speech was, you guys are actually pretty good. Cassandra made the right choices in the end. And Percy, you turned out to be a hero in spite of whatever. And it's all very generalized, but he's trying to make a point in front of the entire town that they are adequate leaders and could take on this position. They just don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so much kind of secondhand cringe for me too when all of these conversations are happening on such a public forum.
Yes.
Like I feel like they should have had this conversation in private about
Oh yeah.
leading and who was going to do that. And, even the whole like scene of them coming out of the castle after the final fight and people like cheering them and stuff, that was a lot of like secondhand cringe for me as well because they're
Mm.
just being imperfect, distracted idiots on their own with their own issues, being blinded. And I don't know, maybe that's my hang up.
Yeah, I think the imposter syndrome that they have is very, very relatable, but
Mm.
that doesn't make it easier to watch.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, God, I want to know what the people of Whitestone's reactions to that was.
Yeah.
Like, did they see the relatability and appreciate the relatability, or
Well, they didn't actually see this conversation.
oh, really?
This conversation was after the speech, and
Ah,
Yenin pulled them off into like a little
right,
side room.
right.
Um, but I'm sure they saw the reactions to Yenin's original speech where Cassandra and Percy were like, are you talking about us? Are we
Mm-hmm.
sure about this?
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of reaction that it's hard to hide.
Yeah. Yeah, because on the one hand, it's refreshing to have leaders who admit that they don't know what they're doing, but they're trying their best.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it doesn't really put a lot of confidence instilling in them if they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, and I think Cassandra especially, she's so young.
Hmm.
Like she's younger than Percy is. Um, if I'm remembering my family tree correctly, which I could
Yeah,
be completely wrong.
I have to look that
Um,
up.
but either way, she's not that old and it's tough to be put in a position of leadership when you're that young, especially over a town that you feel you've been betraying. Like there's got to be a lot of very complicated feelings and a lot of very um hard conversations and realizations that she needs to have. And she just hasn't had time to do that. Like she's had a couple weeks, but a couple weeks is not enough time if, for anybody who's ever had to work through something in therapy, it takes time.
Yeah.
And she has not had a therapist or any help, and she needs all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, based on the Critical Role wiki, she's actually the youngest
Yeah.
out of all of them, it looks like. I think he's third.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, she's got to be like what, 19 at this point or something like that.
something like
She's
that.
yeah, super, super young for the position that they're putting her in. And she's in a very vulnerable, very tenuous state and really needs more support than they're going to give her.
Man, I need the POV Cassandra fantasy story. That's what I need. Give me that book.
Right? Uh, that would be, yes, I want to see all of the things from Cassandra's perspective, but I
Hmm.
always do.
You've convinced me. Man, I honestly didn't think much about Cassandra before we started talking about her in this podcast series, but you're right. There's so much going on there beneath the surface.
I am so obsessed with her, and we see not nearly enough of her for my taste.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, they've been through capital T trauma,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's, I think, one of the most fascinating aspects of high fantasy.
Hmm.
I've been talking about this a lot when it comes to why fantasy and sci-fi adjacent are such great vehicles for talking about real life issues because it creates a safe imaginary playground for all of these harsher reality issues to
Mm-hmm.
play out in. Like,
Yeah, it it makes it so it's just the thing that you need to work through and not all of the related strings.
yeah, yeah, there's just enough distance from it because the trauma is coming from a dragon instead of the trauma coming from, something in real life.
Yeah.
But we're still dealing with parental trauma. We're still dealing with interpersonal trauma. We're still dealing with, death and grief and all of these really juicy, harsh realities that we all have to deal with at some point in our lives. But it's just enough distance that we're able to interact with them, engage with them
Yeah.
without feeling too triggered by it as watchers and viewers.
Yeah, a little bit of distance goes a long way when you're trying to work through something like that. Um, Especially because, it gives us a chance to look at it from the third party lens. And I think that's partially like if we go back to Percy and Cassandra's conversation of, you're better suited. No, you're better suited. Like that's basically what we're doing by engaging with these stories is looking at our own problems from an outside perspective and seeing them with clearer eyes than we would see them if they were our own.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what is behind Percy's need to step away from the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's also behind Cassandra's need to step away from the situation. Yeah, it's a little unfair that she can't in this scenario. Um, because ultimately we do need time to step away from these heavily triggering situations in our life
Hmm.
and take a minute to rest and recoup um, before re-engaging with them because we
Yeah.
can't engage with them from a triggered point of view because then we're just going to be making bad decisions.
Right. And she doesn't have any kind of support system or any kind of space that isn't tied to this place where, she's been struggling for years, where she watched her family die, where she watched Percy leave her behind. Like she's had no support system, no space at all to even think through these things. And, she needs it as much as Percy does, but she doesn't get it until way, way later. And it kind of shows in her story.
Hmm. I mean, parallel, I see Vax doing that with Vex too in this
Hmm.
episode. Is he needs a little more space to process what's going on with his emotional state at the moment
Yeah.
before being able to engage with it. And I
Yeah.
totally understand that.
It's one of the very few times we see him say no to Vex.
Hmm.
And in that in and of itself, it's significant.
Hmm.
Um, but also like totally fair. Figure out where your feelings are before you talk through them with your sister, because
Hmm.
you know, yeah, that just makes everything slightly better. It's no less frustrating, but you'll end up in a better place for it.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I've never had a sibling relationship, like blood sibling relationship. And so I am definitely looking from the outside in on these types of interactions. But it has come off to me over the years that the Vex Vax connection can be a little codependent toxic.
A little bit. Like I do have like some super close sibling relationships. And so sometimes that, relationship gets a little weird to from an outside perspective of like, maybe we're too reliant on each other or we're too connected and it makes it hard for, people to have a life outside of those relationships. And it is very much having to find a very delicate balance between that very close sibling relationship and everything else in your life.
Hmm.
Um, and I think this is one of the few times we actually see the twins working towards that instead of just giving into their instinct to rely on that relationship.
Hmm.
Um, and having a little bit of experience in the sibling closeness, um, it is a hard boundary to set.
Hmm.
You know, but I like seeing that Vax is at least trying it,
Hmm.
um, and that Vex accepts it in the moment.
Hmm.
Both ends of that interaction were kind of impressive to me given their relationship throughout the series.
Yeah, because it's such a knee-jerk reaction for them to cling to each other,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of trauma bonding, I think, wrapped up in that relationship. And yeah, from the outside perspective, I don't necessarily understand it all that much.
Yeah. Sibling relationships can be very weird. but I love them so much. It's part of what I love about this show is the fact that they're so real in that they're complicated and awkward to outside perspectives and sometimes go a little bit weird and too far maybe, but that's what makes them real and fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we're boiling down to with our reactions to this second half is it is very relatable. It is very adjacent to real life or a little
Mhm.
parallel to real life. And as much as we want the cozy escape, like they give us the cozy escape, but at the
Mhm.
same time, it's underlined by the realness of it. So it makes it a little more believable and it makes the cozy escape a little more enjoyable too at the end of the day.
Yeah. It makes it feel less like a fantasy and more like something that you could actually get to at some point.
Yeah, honestly. It's like, all right, well, it makes it easier for us to self-insert too
Hmm.
and be like you said, it's more easier to reach because it is underlined in real stuff.
Yeah.
Well, what about personal experiences?
I relate heavily to the imposter syndrome.
Mm,
Um, that is very, very real. And something that I've spent a lot of time working on over the years, but that has been more and more prevalent lately because new job, new state, new everything. It just, getting comfortable in all of that is often a trigger for imposter syndrome that you think you've worked through. So it just felt very relevant, and very relatable because I know I'm good at my job. I know I'm good at what I do. I know that I, belong in the place that I moved to. But right now, I'm still trying to convince myself that I'm not some outsider and that I actually have a place here and that it will feel good eventually. But right now, it's just a weird level of stress.
mm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone can relate to imposter syndrome. Like,
yeah.
one of the pieces of advice that I tend to give to wannabe writers or aspiring writers is that you have to almost befriend rejection and befriend
Mm.
imposter syndrome because it's going to show up.
Oh, yeah.
You can't avoid it and you can't let it sink you down when it does show up. Um, that's
Yeah.
easier said than done, of course.
It's a hard thing to learn to live with. Like, we all get it. I don't know a single person who hasn't dealt with it, but it comes up at weird periods of your life when you're already stressed and it's hard to work through.
Hmm.
But, we'll all get there eventually.
Yeah. In terms of personal experiences, I think I want to talk about the whole like trauma bonding triggering response to trauma aspect that we saw because we've recently been hit by a bomb cyclone over where I live and there was widespread damage. I think the number was like 600,000 people were without power for a
It's a
good
lot.
chunk of time. And it happened overnight between Tuesday to Wednesday of this week. And it is now Saturday morning, and people are still without power in some places. And the majority of the city in which I work in was hit the hardest, or one of the areas that was hit the hardest. And so being at work this week was quite the experience. I am very fortunate. I'm part of the area that I only lost power for an hour. And so even though I got 2 days off of work because everyone else was struggle busing over there, I just had two vacation days. Everyone else is a mess right now. I came into work on Friday and there was all sorts of trauma triggers going on. There was a lot of arguments going on. There was a lot of trauma bonding going on, and it was fascinating to walk into.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because something like that happens and you end up in some weird places with people that you never thought you would.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of it, I just kind of have to think about how, I mean, this is my response to a lot of the events that have been happening as of late, is that I just need to take care of my immediate sphere of influence as much as I can. And so I'm just like, y'all, if you need a hot shower, a meal, and somewhere to charge your phone, like hit me up. Like I've
Mhm.
got those things readily available to give to you, and it's not going to be any sweat off of my back to give it to you. And I literally realized just before getting on this call is that that's an offer that I can extend every day of the year.
Mhm.
If you just need a safe space to disengage with whatever trauma is going on in your life, I got a futon couch. You can chill. I got some canned soup I can heat up for you. I got a hot shower. I got a dog that will appreciate all the love that you can give her, you know. And I don't think enough people realize that A, they need that type of support, B, that type of support is available, and C, they can also offer that type of support out there in the world.
Yeah. I think there's also a level of people have trouble accepting that because they don't trust the offer. Like that's easy for you to offer, but would you actually follow through? And what part of that should be, you know, communicating that, yeah, I'm serious. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, come on over. Because I live in wildfire country, right?
Mm,
And I've done the same with wildfires that come through of like, hey, if you need to evacuate or you just want to preemptively evacuate or you want your pets somewhere where there's less smoke, my house is open. I got space. I can
mhm,
do that. And very rarely have people actually taken me up on it, but once in a while, if you push enough, people are like, "Yeah, I actually do want to take you up on that. I just don't really like. I'm so used to being independent and self-sufficient that I'm not sure how to."
mhm,
Which also lends into that imposter syndrome of feeling like you need to be able to take care of yourself and you can't accept help from other people.
mhm.
It all ties together.
Hyper independence is a trauma response.
Yep.
Sorry to break it to you. I'm struggling with that myself. I know that.
Oh yeah, that is something I'm so bad about. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But it's just been very fascinating to watch happen because I think a lot of people start to snipe at each other in these
Hmm.
scenarios. I've been seeing a lot of that, especially with everything that's been going on this month.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I don't know whether it's just because I'm tired and I don't have the spoons to like snipe, but it honestly just doesn't feel worth the effort at this point in time.
Yeah.
I just want to love, I just want to hug everyone. If I can feed you soup and make you feel better, I'll feed you soup and make you feel better.
Yeah. And that in turn will make me feel better. So please
Yeah,
take me up on it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, what are we gonna do about it?
Um, I think the thing that came to mind um was when they were giving little gifts to each other at the end.
Mm,
Um, Making sure that you're doing the things for people that will matter to them.
mm.
Like Vex gives Vax the belt. That sentence was hard to get through. There's
Yeah,
too
yeah,
many
I get it.
coinciding vowels.
I get it.
Um, because she knows how much it means to him. And like Percy accepts Keyleth's weird gift of a raven skull because he recognizes the intent.
Hmm.
And we're kind of moving into the holidays, we're moving into gift giving season. And so um, I think the thing that I took from that was taking the time to find gifts or experiences that actually mean something to the people I'm giving them to. Because those are the ones that will have an impact. We'll see Simon later in this series. We'll see that Raven skull pop up again and again and again, because they mean something to the players and to the characters. And so I am going to make an effort to gear my gifts this season towards things that matter, to the people I'm giving them to, and not just for the sake of giving them something because they are related to me or whatever.
Thank you for that reminder. I really needed that reminder, honestly. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna make people soup, I guess. Just let people know that I am serious about those offers.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a glib, like trying to make myself look better by offer.
Right.
Because I do genuinely understand. I've honestly always had this kind of fantasy about ultimately having a house one day where like all my kids' friends can come to and have a safe space
Mm-hmm.
to chill. Is like,
Yeah.
you'll get fed here, like you'll just be able to be yourself here without fear of retribution. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many parents that just want their kids to take a certain mold, and I'm just not about that.
Yeah. No, and having that kind of space as the kid on the other end is incredible.
Yeah, like if you just need to escape for a bit, I've got a perfect escape nest. I use it all the time.
Oh yeah. It's built up and delightful because I like it.
Yeah, it's like the perfect escape nest because I myself needed that, and I know so many other people need that as well. And
Yeah.
if you need to borrow my escape nest, please do so because I don't use it nearly as much as I want to these days. So someone
Yeah.
should be using it, I guess. Um, but yeah, making sure that people know that I'm serious with that offer and letting people react to their traumas in the way that will best serve them too.
Mm-hmm.
Not making them serve as leader of a city if they just need a little vacay first.
Yeah.
And just a little bit of therapy first.
Cassandra needs a hug.
Yeah, she needs an escape nest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to judge people for their trauma responses. Some may be healthier than others,
Oh yeah.
but I do understand where they're coming from. So
Yeah.
let's kind of just gently nudge them towards the healthier options rather than the unhealthy options.
Sounds like a plan to me. Will it work? We'll see. But sounds like a plan.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to add before we wrap up for today?
I think I'm good.
This is powerful stuff that we're talking about. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and feelings and insights and stories with us as well. We'd love to know how Critical Role has impacted you in your own lives. Special thanks to Alice for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Always happy to be here.
So next time we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 37, Part 1, and joining me will be Petal, so I'm just excited for that. As always, I'm looking for more co-hosts and guests, so if you're interested, just hit me up. I'll send you the links. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below, follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Eating CR for all the juicy updates, and until next time, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free, and be the chaotic good you wish to see in the world. Take care, guys.
Bye.